Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Barb Taylor. We're going to be talking about her many books. Rain Breaks No Bones is the latest one, but we're also going to be talking about Pain Breaks No Bones, All Waiting Is Long, and Cry at Night. We'll find out what they're all about. But today it is about Rain Breaks No Bones, set in 1955. This final installment in Taylor's best-selling Scranton Trilogy explores a family legacy of loss and sometimes mystical vision of a better tomorrow. Through these novels are connected by they're connected to one another, but they can each stand alone. Born and raised in Scranton, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Barbara sets her novels in the hometown that she loves and fills them with miners, evangelists, voodoo villains, nuns, gangsters, prostitutes, widows, musicians, dreamers, and a seer or two. Gosh, you must be talking about Washington, D.C. Anyway, we're going to be talking about everybody has secrets, even the dead. And this 50-year-old Violet has had a good life, the love of novice man, the joys of motherhood, yet in 1955, her heart still aches over the death of her sister more than 4 decades earlier. Okay, let's take it from there. It sounds terribly intriguing. Now, how much of this is your story in the book? Because my brother's a professional author, and it always stems from something he sees or a little bit of about himself. You know, is this your story kind of fantasized, or is this just a story that came to you? Welcome to the show, Hen.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. And that was a lovely introduction. So in order to answer the question, I have to go back to the first book, Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night, because that book was very loosely based on a family story. My grandmother's sister, my great aunt Pearl, on the day of her baptism, it was the 4th of July. They were playing with sparklers. Her dress caught on fire. She survived for 3 days. She sang hymns. And so when people in the town heard about the little girl who sang hymns, everyone came to view the body. So I heard this story my whole life. And as tragic and obviously horrific as that was for my great aunt Pearl, her sister Janet was in the yard with her. And I always wondered how much of my Aunt Janet's life was affected by what she saw. You know, you didn't get therapy when you were a kid.
No.
You just kept going.
Yeah.
So she didn't have the happiest life all the time. And so that wondering created my character Violet, who in fiction is blamed for the death of her sister.
Okay.
So I tell you all of that because the first book really was grounded in a lot of family history. And then as I continued, All Waiting Is Long, and then now Rain Breaks No Bones, they get further and further away from real life. And I've been a little more creative with the characters.
There's always a stem of truth in something, isn't it? And, you know, we're constantly telling kids, don't play with fireworks. Even today, they still don't learn. And there's always these accidents every time. Many places are banning them, good. And there's also, you know, silent fireworks we can have, which is better for everybody. Post-traumatic stress, animals, young children, and a few other things. So, you know, we're very slow to learn that things need to change. And as you said, back in that day, you know, it was, well, it happened, now suck it up and get on with life. And that's what we were told to do. And so I think we actually have generations of post-traumatic stress without them realizing that it is that.
I agree. In fact, I think that's what I didn't realize that when I started, but what I was really doing was looking at this generational trauma. So the first book opens in 1913, and then the second book is 1930, 1935. The third one is 1955. So we see how this trauma continues to affect the generations. So even though the books stand alone and you don't need to read the other ones to understand the one you have in front of you, they all have that connection to that family trauma.
I'm so glad you've done it that way because, we talk about trauma in the now or what's recent history, like our lifetime. But we also talk about on many of my shows is the trauma DNA that is passed on. And it's never mind the event because they weren't at the event and it was so long ago. But the
Right.
person that carries the trauma in their DNA gets passed on through the generations. And then people kind of have this feeling and they don't even know where it stems from.
That's exactly it. I had a cousin who, when she first had her children, said to me, "Are you afraid of sparklers? Is this something that,
Mm.
we all have in our family?" And she and her kids were 3 generations removed.
Yeah.
And we do all have that fear, and we
Mm.
have carried that with us. So I'm sort of fascinated by how the past really
Mm.
does affect what the lives we're living now, even the past we haven't lived.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Double traumas, right?
Right,
Carrying our
right.
own and everybody else's as well. Back in the day, one
Mhm.
didn't talk about it. It was just it was too tragic to talk about. Just concentrate on happy things, only today and tomorrow. And of course, we just built it up, built it up. Now we're in this arena where we need to talk about it. And we're
Mhm.
encouraged to talk about things that happen. Because if we don't spend it, it stays sitting inside of us, always holding us back or creating illness or creating fears. We have no idea where that fear comes from. So we're in an era where talking about it is encouraged. But as you said back then, you only went to counselors if there was some real mental problem. It wasn't a question of that you have a traumatic experience that is you're carrying through.
Right. In the first book, I actually the character of Grace, she's the mother, and she has a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
And I didn't have the language to describe that because we wouldn't use the terms that we use today about the trauma and so forth. And so I had to come up with another way to show that. And what I actually ended up doing was creating this character named Grief, and he's
Mm.
almost Grace's alter ego, but he can say the things that she can't.
Ah.
And so it was a way to show what mental illness was like at the time without using current
Mm.
terminology that we would use today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that even affected the writing, what because
Yes.
we didn't talk about it in 1913. So
Yeah.
you
Mm.
see a little bit of that transformation as well as the stories progress.
I like the fact that you've used different language because, language that was spoken back then, it was not just so forthcoming. It was kind of mirage of, an intent and using that language. And because, people, why didn't they talk about it? It was obvious. They should have just done this. They should have just done that. No, it was alluded to, right? And with
Exactly.
coded words, coded
Exactly.
actions. Hmm.
Exactly. That's how the family story was told. I only picked up bits and pieces of it over the years. I didn't, I was going to say I didn't know enough to ask more, but I think I knew enough not to. There
Mm.
was that unspoken message that you don't, I never spoke about it with my Aunt Janet, and yet I spent so much time with her. She was there in the yard with her sister,
Hmm.
but you just knew not to. So that older generation didn't talk about it. They were very stoic.
And of course, today would be where were the parents? You don't hand sparklers to children and pretty dresses, without a parent being there, because the parent could have probably put that fire out very quickly with the rolling of the body. But and and we see this over and over again, another child who witnessed it or was just busy playing, and the sibling is the one that paid the price. They carry that with them for the rest of their life. And it may
Exactly.
even be unspoken um, accusatory towards them, but the guilt of I should have done something, it gets
Mhm.
carried with them for all their lives, and nobody could quite understand that unless they've been through it.
Exactly. That's survivor's guilt. I think
Mm.
that's exactly what it is. And like I said, my Aunt Janet, she was a character. She didn't have the happiest life. And I always tell people she was married 4 times to the same 2 men. So I, who knows what effect her traumatic childhood had on her later in life, but I always think
Mm,
that's a gem of a story.
yeah, but that is the point, isn't it? We're in a
Right,
pattern, we're in a groove, we're in an old programming. Unless we recognize this program as something that is not serving us, something that is actually probably doesn't even belong to us, even though it may come in a different face, it's
right.
the same programming that you're drawn to because that's all you know. When we're aware that this is, I'm repeating the same program over and over again, the same pattern, I need to be aware of this and break it, pivot, and set a different intent, a different energy, then I will get somebody different. But just because somebody's face is different or they say something different, I married my father. I married a Chinese
Right,
gentleman from across the world, but I married my father, right? Little did
right,
I know.
right.
And that's the thing, because there's that underlining programming that's going on there that most of us are unaware of until somebody points it out that you're repeating yourself over and over again.
Exactly. And I think that what I was able to do in Rain Breaks No Bones, Violet is 50 now. So she coped and she got through her feelings as a young girl. She did what she had to do. But now it's sort of coming for her, and she needs to not push it aside but actually confront it. So I like to think of Rain Breaks No Bones as a book that's about hope and healing,
Yeah,
because she's finally recognizing those patterns that
yeah.
she's continued to live in her life, and now she's facing the trauma. So
Mm.
although it's, the whole story is traumatic, I do like to think that the books are filled with hope and the possibility of healing.
Well, the fact that at 50, she's
Yes,
finally facing, the point is it's never too late. I always used to say to my mother
exactly,
and sister, whatever trauma you're holding on to in this lifetime, if you do not clear it now, all you're doing is passing it on. Right?
exactly,
And so whether it's
exactly.
through us or whether it's through a next lifetime that has your soul, we're always passing it on. So it's up to us in our lifetime, no matter our age, is to make sure that we are really coming from the compass of our core and our heart, and that it is truly us and not a condition that's been imposed upon us.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And I think it's so true. And I also, Grace the mother is in all three of my books. So Grace is in her mid 70s at this point. And I have another character who's followed us through, the widow Lankowski. She's in her 90s. And they all have their own moments where they
Mm,
face the past. And like you said, I don't think it's about age, it's about healing.
mm.
And we have to do that work for ourselves. We can't just tell other people to do it. They have to see us doing it. I think we
Yes,
have to be models
yes.
for that. So,
Because I always say inspiration begets invitation. And when somebody is
ah,
inspired to see how far you've come, or that you've changed, or that you're embracing this and that now, it becomes an invitation, even subliminally, to them that,
that's
gosh, if they
beautiful.
can do it, we can do it.
Right, right. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. On a different note, I like to try to inspire when I'm out giving book talks, because I didn't start writing until I was in my 40s. My
Good for
first
you.
book came out when I was 50. So that thing, you're never too old. And hopefully it inspires some people to say, oh, maybe I'll give it a shot, whatever their creative endeavor is.
4 books in four
Ah,
months,
in
right?
4 months,
In 4 months.
that's
Well, this one
amazing.
was written last year, so this is my own book. This one is I'm sorry, it's a shameless plug on this one. It's Our Forgotten Children. It's an anthology around very much what you're talking about, is that we're leaving our children behind. They're becoming forgotten in our educational system, in any system. The fact that we are not paying attention to their needs, we're not supporting families. So there are 15 chapters in here addressing that, bringing about the awareness of it, but at the same time, when you're aware, you begin to care. And then we start seeing solutions. So that is about, and I'm in 2 other books as well. I'm 69. So this all happened
There
in
you
my
go.
69th, right? So it is never too late. If you've got a story inside of you or a passion inside of you that needs to come out, please do not put an age bracket on it, young or old.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was a teacher for 31 and a half
Mm,
years. That was my career. And so
you
even
will love
there,
this book. There's teachers in here.
well, that when you said that, that's what I was thinking. I have to read that book for sure because that's a topic near and dear to my
Mm,
heart. But you can have many careers in your life. You can have
exactly.
many acts. So
Yeah.
I love this. This is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. I call it, we have many chapters in our book of life, right? And
Nice.
each chapter is kind of the decade of where we are. And, I'm now grandma. I'm about to move cities again, hopefully to my
Ah,
35th final home, where I'm going
oh,
to be close to my daughter and the babies. And but yet in my works, I've been podcasting for 12 years. I knew that books needed to be, to be the next voice, to back up what we've said in the post and the podcast. And again, it's like I've had people say, but don't you just want to retire? And do what? Right?
right,
This is the
right.
time period in life as we get older where we really see what is important, where we really want to share those stories in whichever way, where we really have kind of the time and space to actually pursue something else. So
Yes.
kudos to you for starting this project and allowing yourself to take the journey in actual writing it.
Well, thank you for that. I think the same way because now, when you get to the other side of it, you realize, I have more years behind me than ahead of me, and so I want to use these years constructively. But I don't want to just sit around and not use them. I just
Exactly.
want to use them more
Yes.
purposefully, more intentionally.
Yeah.
So the
That comes
writing
with the
has
age
done that.
wisdom, right?
Yes,
We
yes,
know
yes.
what really is more important now.
I
So
hope so.
yeah.
I hope so.
Um,
And you have me beat. I just moved, I think, for my 10th time and hopefully the last time. So
yeah, I mean, a 35th time, it's
wow.
like this office is going to get packed up at the end of this week, and
Oh,
then it's the actual moving I don't like, but the new home and a new
yeah,
city and new everything
that's
else. I think it
exciting.
just kind of adds flavor, and I think this is what a lot of people don't realize. As we get older, and we've raised our kids, we've done our job, our second career, third, fourth, or career, our senior career is where we can really pursue something that is meaningful to us. And in that meaningfulness will be meaningful to others. And it's like so many statistics of people that retire from a very stressful or very demanding job and they've got no hobbies, no nothing, and they're dead within a few months.
Right,
Right. So
right,
it's
right.
really important. And again, through the observation of what happened so many years ago in your family, allowing it not only to be told, but to take let it take you where it wants to go. Right? I
Exactly.
bet that was exciting, allowing it to go where it wanted to go.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Violet is 50 now. So I feel like she is also coming into her own.
Mm.
She's been a housewife and now she has to go and get a job. And there's my characters are doing the same thing that I think I'm doing.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, the characters have taken on a life of their own. I have a character in this book named Ruth who early on, I had a sense of her story. I write organically, so I don't
Yeah.
outline, so I don't know what's coming. And I just couldn't figure out she's from 1918 and how did her story from 1918 fit in with
Mm,
1955?
mm.
And I kept saying to her, look, I'll write your story, but not now. I have to finish
Yes,
this book. And she wouldn't let go. And then at some point, I understood how she fit in with this book and how much she's a part of it. So yeah, I got a little more comfortable with allowing the characters to guide me and to be more creative and pull away from the family stories. I still
yes.
use them, but they're not the main part of the story. Now it's a little bit more creative.
Well, they were the seeding, but what you've done
Yes,
is allowed the
yes,
garden to bloom and grow other things. And I mean, this is
yes.
the thing is, I don't know with you with writing. I'm a very organic writer. I write
Ah,
very much where I'm at. And this is the way I do my own personal shows when I do mine too. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to talk about until I press record and see what comes out. But it's that
love it.
discovery of what, of being present and then looking at it afterwards. And because you're almost kind of out of body writing or speaking, aren't you? And then you look at it and go, wow. I couldn't have thought that up. So it kind of almost
Exactly.
channeled its way through you.
Those are my best writing days.
Mhm,
They don't always happen.
mhm.
Sometimes it's a slug, but I feel like this is a terrible way to say it, but it's a high that I chase because
Yes,
those days
yes.
are the best days when I lose track of time and I'm into the flow. And then I go back and look at it later and think, who wrote this?
I know.
So it's there's a little bit of magic to writing for sure.
Yes, exactly. I think one of the important things of life that we're beginning to understand, and through storytelling we can do this, is that yes, it's wonderful to have skills, and skills are transferable. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, they're transferable into something else. But the big word is allow. Allow
Mm.
yourself to open up. I have talked myself into every job I've had. I had no idea if I could do it or not. I found out when I got going. And I think
Right.
that that's probably a bit too much the extreme. It's just who I am. But if we don't allow ourselves to explore the
Mhm.
possibilities, if we don't allow ourselves these other characters to come into the story that take on a life of their own, we're missing the point. We cannot be rigid or narrow linear. It's almost we're throwing our arms out to the universe and saying, okay, bring it on.
Exactly. And by the time I got to the third book, Rain Breaks No Bones, I feel like I was much more comfortable with that. And I still resisted the character of Ruth for a while, but eventually I understood that I just have to let that go. I do a little meditating, a little free writing just to get in that
Mhm.
headspace and discover what the characters had to tell me.
How
So
much of being a teacher has influenced your writing?
that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. I think it's influenced my writing a great deal. I'll tell you, for one, there were certain classic books that I taught over and over and over again.
What
Now I
grade did you
changed,
teach? So, yeah,
well, I taught anything from grades 7 through 12,
right.
but I taught for over 30 years.
Mm,
So in that time, I taught all of those grades
yes.
multiple times. And after a while, just because I didn't want it to be boring to me, so I would study the cadences, I would study the sentence structures, I'd look at how they were able to, end a chapter on a note where you wanted to keep going and
Mm,
all. So I don't think I was even doing it consciously, but
mhm,
but those things sort of permeated my brain. And plus, I as a teacher, I'm a good student. So I went
mm,
to Wilkes University for their creative writing program. And my mentor, Kelly Jones, an amazing woman, would give me suggestions and I'd try every one.
mm,
And there were other members of, other people I knew from class, other writers, and they'd say, oh, my mentor told me to try this, but I'm not going to because blah, blah, blah. And I thought,
mm.
well, just try it,
Yes.
see. So I think because I'm a teacher, I was more open to learning and not
Mm.
just producing.
Yeah, I get that goes back to that rigidity. If it's, well, this is the way it should be done, and we've got to do it this way. And it's like, no, that is actually kind of the structure, but how you put those pieces together
Mhm.
comes really from the imagination, from the allowing, from the stepping into the inquisitive and the possible. You can't take, it's got to be done, A, B, C, and D, and not allow yourself to do the other, because otherwise, as you said, it will be boring. It's like
Right.
reading a manual. Right? Is the manual stimulating? No, it shows you how to do X, Y, and Z, but you're yawning all the way through it, right?
Right.
So, but if there was a story thread into it, then all of a sudden we'll be excited to read it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I do. That's an interesting question. I have to think more about that, but I know my teaching. And I will say my
Mm,
students just, I think teaching keeps you young
yes.
because you are with that younger population all the time. I retired about 5 years ago and it was a good decision. I'm writing full time now, but I do miss just the encouragement, the laughter, the fresh ideas that would come from them that maybe I wouldn't even think about.
Yeah.
So, and they challenged me. So, in great ways, they challenged my thinking and they made me, really understand how the world is changing. And I'm sure that goes into my writing.
I would say the best teachers are those that are willing to learn.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Because
I've always been a learner.
mm,
Yeah.
excuse me,
No, you're fine.
that is 24 hours, no, 48 hours of children running around screaming at a birthday party, which went over a weekend, and you having to talk over them. So, yeah,
Sounds wonderful.
it was wonderful, but exhausting. This is
Yes.
actually what I've realized is that spectating that where I used to be that, I had three kids and
Right.
I could do all of that and the noise and everything else, you just were in the groove. But now being older and kind of being in it and you realize, oh, how exhausting it is. But I
Yes.
think that's also something else where a lot of people may put barriers in front of themselves of, I just get too tired. I just don't know how to do it. Or I don't like being around that kind of arena. Or I really don't want to go and do the book, the book launches or the book podcasts or the book this and that. I
Mhm.
just want the book to go out and do on its own, which I'm sorry, folks, it hasn't got legs. It needs you to share it out, right? And it's
Right.
like, I think one of the big things for anything that you're going to do, whether it's writing or whether it's anything else that you want to do in life, ask yourself why. Why are you
Hmm.
wanting to do it? Because that's important. Why did you want to put these books together?
That's a very simple and a very profound question. It's funny. I always wrote when I was a kid, but I never knew I could be a writer. I never
Hmm.
knew other writers. I thought that was something that was just out there in some ethereal space that I couldn't be a part of. And so I taught and I loved it. But it's funny, even though I didn't intend to be a writer, I would collect little ideas
Hmm.
and throw them in this box that was this big plastic bin. And every time I moved, that bin went with me. And I never understood it because I didn't
Yes.
really go through it, but it
Right.
had to go with me. And
Hmm.
then when I was in my 40s, I was married. I'm divorced now, but I was married. And for a year, I lived out in Memphis with my husband to help out with some family things. And when I was out there, because I was a teacher, I had to take classes. I was on a sabbatical,
Hmm.
and I ended up taking a class that I thought was straight fiction, but it was fiction for writers.
Hmm.
And my first day in class, I thought, well, I'm getting out of here. This is not what I signed up for. And then I thought about it and I thought, it's been a long time since I was scared, good scared. And
Aha.
so I stayed and I did the writings and I wrote the short story. And the professor said to me on the last day of class, she pointed in the back of the room. I was just sort of hiding there. She said, when you get home, you need to find an MFA program. And the next day in my Memphis mailbox, a flyer showed up from Wilkes University, which was 20 minutes from my Pennsylvania home. So, and by the way, I had a writing sample, the short story I wrote for class. So I feel like it was meant to be. And
Hmm.
then all of those stories that I was carrying around for all those years that I didn't understand why, suddenly I knew I had
Yeah.
this purpose.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
or at least this drive, this
Hmm.
desire.
It's always been quite incredible with the shows I've done over the years of people that are, CEOs or reach big success and doing this and then realize the job is not feeding them. They're good at it, they're making good money, but the heart isn't in it. And
Right.
they've gone back. I call it the nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or the cosmic two by four, right?
Okay.
So nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you're not meant to be on this path, you're meant to pivot into this path. And the cosmic two by four comes along and kind of pulls the rug from underneath you. And have we got your attention? Well, while you're getting back up, don't go back on that path. This is the path you need to
Exactly.
be, and you know it because when you go back to your childhood, this is what you loved. This is what you excelled
Exactly.
at. And how many people have picked up some things they absolutely loved doing as a child, but then it was suppressed because you've got to go and get
Right.
a real life and a real job and a real this and that. And the wonderment and the gift that they were given was not used. And I think that's so sad to see. That's one of the reasons in the book there that, talk about like, let's tap into their gift. Let's help them
Right.
find and navigate that gift and how they can use it instead of having them conform the moment they get to school and have it almost kind of beaten out of them. So many people have
Exactly.
gone back to kind of childhood things that they were good at
Mhm.
that they never knew.
Absolutely. And this was something that I was good at in childhood. I will say I loved my career as a teacher, and I don't really have regrets that I didn't start writing sooner
Mhm.
because I feel like there's a maturity to my writing
Yes.
that I wouldn't have had in my 20s.
Right,
So I
right.
do feel like everything happened for a reason. But I went back to Wilkes when I was in my 40s. I taught for a good 10, 12 years. And so I was writing and teaching, and then
Mhm.
eventually worked into the full-time writing. But I've had a good life. I love it all.
And but because you were a teacher that was eager to learn,
Yes,
not just learn from other people, but learn from your students. And that's the
exactly.
thing, that's so important. And anybody who's teaching out there, I'm a true colors coach. And so I find that there are certain color types that it is, I'm the boss, you'll do what I tell you to do, and it's got to
Mhm.
be done this way.
Right.
Right. And that conformity is a soul killer, I think. When you've got a teacher is like, I don't know, let us explore. Let's work this out together. I feel that you're giving
Exactly.
children tools of navigation of how to look at something and then
Yes,
find the solution or find the creation in it. And I think that's what we need more of. So you clearly was
absolutely.
that kind of teacher that you were willing to be inspired and learn from your own students.
I absolutely agree with everything you said. And unfortunately, I feel toward the end of my career, teaching was going in the exact opposite direction. Suddenly,
Hmm.
everything was online, it was
Yes.
testing, canned programs. Um, I'm not saying, I'm sure the younger teachers, education always changes, so I'm
Yep.
sure they'll find their footing in that. But I got to a point where I thought this isn't what I signed up for.
Yes. Yes.
So when I was a teacher, I loved it. And then when it started to be, oh, you have to put them on this computer program for, uh 8 weeks of pre-testing, and no, and I was always grateful that I could leave when I left,
Mm,
and that I had prepared something else. So I was
yeah.
working on the writing all
Right.
along. So I just feel like everything lined up for me. But I worry. I think we're teaching.
Mhm.
I think there's a tendency to teach kids now just how to be good workers, and that scares
Yes.
me.
Yes. Instead
Yeah,
of using their own beautiful imagination. Now,
exactly.
one thing I've read in here is like, the prostitutes, the everything else. Well, sounded like somewhere else. But you've got everything in here. And is this then kind of brought about from the observation of life and town of people? I mean,
Yes.
where, you've put everybody in there, but you know, nuns and gangsters and widows and musicians and dreamers, a seer or two and prostitutes. You've got them all in there. Was
Yes.
this that as you opened up and were ready to see, the characters kind of stepped in on their own?
Some did. Some I had in my head. Um, Scranton is really a rich town.
Hmm.
There's the people are wonderful. They're hard workers. We have that mining background, and there's just so much fodder here for writing. And so when I talked about prostitution was big in Scranton.
Hmm.
They had the bawdy houses in the alleys in downtown. Um, One time, and here's how I do a lot of research for my books because they're historical fiction. And my dad was a mason, and there was a dinner, and my mom had passed away by then, so I went as his date. And I was sitting there, and at the table, the men were in their 80s or older, and I thought, well, I'm just going to ask. And I said, so I'm a writer. Does anyone here have any knowledge of the prostitution industry in Scranton? And the one guy told me this wonderful story about how he and his brother, when they were kids, they used to run errands for the girls. And
Mm.
what they would do is, Scranton is big with Texas wieners. That's,
Mm.
the hot dogs with the sauce. They would pass dimes through the chicken wire to the boys to run and get them Texas wieners. And that's when I was able to, I had never read about the chicken
Mm.
wire. And I asked,
Mm.
apparently they had chicken wire on the windows so the men couldn't sneak in and out. So that's the kind of a detail that makes the writing so authentic.
Yes.
but nobody knows it if you're not doing firsthand interviews.
Right, exactly.
So
Yes.
we had it all. Babe Ruth used to come here and spend some time with the women, and then go have a spaghetti dinner at one of our restaurants downtown. So we just have this colorful history. We're close to New York, so the vaudevillians used to come here and try out their acts. There's just so much material here. In fact, I just finished Rain Breaks No Bones, and I thought I'd take a break. And lo and behold, I needed characters in my head, so I started a new book, and it takes place in Scranton. So I
But,
love
but
my
the thing is,
hometown.
it's so rich in its
It is.
tapestry. There's so many stories that you can tell there. And that's,
Absolutely.
you want people to kind of look at that place differently. But, half the time people don't know what's going on in quote in their backyard, right?
For
And until
sure.
we open up that little box and have a look, it's like, really? What? Just down the road from me? And that's the thing is,
Exactly.
it's letting people see a different city from a different point of view, but maybe start opening their eyes to where they are living themselves.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I will say, this is sort of funny, but when I was living in Memphis, that's when the show The Office started running.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of it. And I looked up one night, and there was Wyoming Avenue in Scranton on my television. And that's when I realized how much I missed and loved home.
Mm.
So I had to go away from it to
Yes. Yes.
realize how much I loved it.
Yeah. And that I think is kind of uh, something for everybody is that it isn't the place necessarily that you have an angst with. It's your own connection within yourself where you realize which place is right for you. But if you just go with the same lack of wonderment or just what am I trying to say? You can't outrun yourself. You can't go to another place with the same mindset as you had in the last place, right? You have
Yes,
to go with the wonderment of exploration of who are you in this place? Who are you
exactly.
meant to be? Is this the right place that complements you? And if it isn't, then you explore until you find that place that does. But very often for people, it is, well, I had it all along, my red rosy slippers, nothing like
Right.
home, right?
Right.
But it's the
Exactly.
outside view looking in, but unless you change who you are, you're not going to see what you had.
Exactly. And sometimes, so you do have to take that journey
Mm.
away. I remember I saw a play one time, and I won't get the line right, but it was something about the problem with getting away from it all is you have to take yourself with you.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
getting away from it all is not always the solution, but you don't know that till you get there. So,
You can't outrun yourself.
exactly.
You just can't. Wherever you go to, there you are, right?
Exactly.
And so that, then is the inside out job, which, looks like Violet has done through her various journey through the books, is, discovering about herself, letting go of the trauma, letting go of things she didn't have control over, kind of
Right.
discovering who she is now and what really is meant to be. And that is that, this is network is called self-discovery wisdom. Wisdom lies within us and accessible through us at any time. We just got to open our hearts to receive it, let our spirit get into action for our mind to know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And if you've got this programming constantly in its way, it keeps putting you on the old reset of that program. Well, you've got to get in there and delete it and look at and be open to what is possible. And you can't do that if the old programming is still going.
Exactly, exactly. And I think what I tried to show in my books is, the old programming worked early on. I mean, they were the defense mechanisms
Mm.
that Violet came up with to get through such a horrific situation. But what works for us at one stage of our lives does not necessarily work at another. So now here she is, a 50-year-old woman, and I was writing it as a woman in my 50s. I just
Mm.
turned 60, but when I was writing it, I was still in my 50s. And so it just, she becomes aware, and I had this awareness of what happens at that age, so it was sort
Yes.
of this perfect marriage
Yeah.
of character and author, I think, in the moment.
I love the book design and the title,
Oh,
Rain Breaks No Bones. How did that title come about?
well, again, we'll have to go back to the first book. I called the first book Providence Square because that's the neighborhood in Scranton where the book takes place. And my publisher in New York said, it sounds like Rhode Island. So
Mm.
they changed it but then the book distributor didn't like it. What I discovered was a lot of people have a say in what your
Mm,
book looks like before it goes out. So I came up with a bunch of titles. My characters are Welsh, so I found some old Welsh proverbs,
mhm,
and that's where "Sing in the morning, cry at night" came from.
mhm,
It's the title of the first book. It's an old Welsh proverb. So then I thought, well, I guess I'm doing Welsh proverbs. So the second book is "All waiting is long."
mhm.
And I love that proverb. I mean,
Yes.
how true,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And then this book, "Rain breaks no bones." There's a storm, the river, there's
Mm.
a water motif. So it just seemed to work for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's people who write books. It's always the title that is the problem, isn't it?
Hmm.
And then, when one sits with you, I always say that you come across so many titles and you're excited about at the time, and then somebody asks you later on, well, what's it going to be called? And you can't remember. It can't have been that good a title, right? It's when
Exactly.
that one sticks with you and it comes rolling
Exactly.
off your lips, then you know, that's it. I've got the right
That's it.
title. But it's just as important because that's, the invitation. So the book
Right.
cover and the title is just as important as anything else because it's that invite into um, wanting somebody to turn the pages. And what I found
Absolutely.
with people when they do read is how much they see of themselves in there.
Mhm.
Never mind whether it's something happened to them or something happened in their family, or is even it's just the way somebody approaches it in the book, or the attitude, or the this or that. It's that
Mhm.
relatability of, this could be me in another life. Or like she's here right now. That's where I'm at. And that's
Yes.
the thing of it. This goes under an author's kiss. And the reason I called that genre that, because I do believe a book is like a gentle kiss. And
Ah,
it's a kiss of wonderment, of life, of excitement, of intrigue, of exploration, right? So I think that when we put a book down, I want it to keep feeding us long after we read
yes.
it, right? So
Yes.
it's something that you can't help but refer, or that the story revisits itself to you.
Hmm.
With that little something I read about that, and that's why a book keeps on giving. And so, I think that's the beauty of books is that,
Yes.
it's always there on your shelf to revisit anytime.
Absolutely. And I love that. I have had people show up at my book events to tell me their stories
Yeah.
because they know I'll be interested because I have something in the book that resonated with them. And I absolutely love that. I had a man come one time. He was probably, I would say, 80s at that point. And he said that when he was a young boy, like Stanley in my first book, he was sent to work in the mines, but his
Mm,
aunt came and took him, and he
mm,
had a whole different life because of it.
yes.
And he
Yes.
cried. Here he
Mm,
was,
yeah.
probably in his 80s,
Mm,
but it still had such a profound impact on him.
yes.
And then he reads my book, and here's a little boy who's sent into the
Mm,
mines, even though he's so smart and could really be more in life.
yeah.
So that's that's the most satisfying
Mm,
feeling when a reader tells me about something they've connected with in the book. It
yeah.
touches my heart. I love the
Yeah.
idea of the kiss. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Everything is at our fingertips, whether it's at the clicking or whether it's turning the pages. If we're willing to step into wonderment and exploration and imagination, if we're willing to, I'm not going to take the beaten path anymore. I'm going to take a less trodden path. I'm going to be in that discovery of who am I now. Pay attention to what is around me because the signs are always there. And
Right.
very often a book is something that incites us to go, you know what? I've been walking the same path as this character for so long. And it's like, I want to be like this character who decided to go down a different path. You never know what it's going to do to incite someone to look
Yeah.
at their own life and go, yeah, I want to be like them.
My grandmother was divorced. And when I was older, it was long after her divorce, she was remarried and so on. And I wish I remember it. She told me the line from a book, and it's the line that she read that made her decide she was going to have a different life.
Good
And
for
I
her.
mean, it was one line in a book.
That's
That was
it.
it. So
Yeah.
it can be powerful.
Yeah, that's why a book keeps on giving. You can reread it and get something
Right.
else from it because
Right.
it feeds you what you need to know in the moment. And then when you go back and read it again, there's something else in there that's there for you. So,
Absolutely.
and it's why book clubs are so important. And I also say podcast clubs. Read the book,
Yes,
listen to the podcast, and then have a group where you talk about it. And this is how you see it, this is how they see it. And all of a sudden, you've got a much rounder picture on how everybody saw it, and it expands out even more. Right. So don't just keep
absolutely.
it to yourself, share what it gave to you and, illuminate other people's lives. How do people buy the book, Han? And how can people reach you and what can you help them with?
Thank you for that question. You can find me on my website at barbarajtaylor.com. And there I have links to the books. You can find the books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores. You can go to Akashic, my publisher, their website. But all of those links are on my page, so barbarajtaylor.com. I'm also on Facebook. And if you like historical research, I put up some of my research
Mm,
on my Facebook author page. So you can find that information on my website. Everything is there. And I also give background as to where the story ideas came from and
lovely.
the family history and all of that. So barbarajtaylor.com.
And of course, you're on Instagram and Threads too.
Yes,
So
yes,
you're out there on all three of those. And the thing is, what I encourage people to do is when you read a book and it inspires you, and you read all three of them, and you're talking about it, please reach out. Let the author know what you got out of it. Which
yes,
character you liked, or what did it say to you? Right? It isn't an ego
absolutely.
thing. It is or even a validation thing. It just shows that somebody has engaged. And this
Right,
is what, as an author or a speaker or podcaster or anything, we just want to know you're engaged and that we are actually serving you. So
right,
those comments that you give back, let us know that we are serving you, or maybe you have a question that we haven't thought of that, can then be addressed. So please remember to
mhm,
put comments in when you buy the book, when you listen to the podcast, and it's okay if it's in a question form, because
absolutely.
that just means we've something we have to think about that we can answer. But that's what it's all about. Well,
No, absolutely.
I love
Thank you
the
for that.
books. I love the books. I love the idea of what you've done, taking historical, but also using the history of the town to take
Mhm.
it, I call that counterfaction. You're taking, facts and fictionalizing it.
That's
And
it.
some people say that's liberty. No, no, it's faction. So I just elaborate it. But the thing is, what I've also heard from authors when they've done something like that, somebody come across and say, "That's like my family member," and you fought that person
Right,
up. But somebody goes,
right.
"You're describing them to a T."
Right. I actually had someone, I spoke at a school one time, and a teacher said to me, you know, the family that you have in there, my neighbors know them. That was their uncle. And I felt terrible breaking their heart, but I said, no, I made those people up. But they were so
Yes,
realistic, and the
yes.
last name matched. They were sure that I was writing about their family. And so that always makes me happy when
Yes.
people connect.
But that comes back very much to, kind of the universing of the channel, allowing it to come through. That very often an untold story of somebody else needs to come through you to be that fictional story, but it is another story. So,
Right.
and as you said, you read your work afterwards and you go, where did that come from? And it's like
Exactly.
it was something that needed to be said, needed to be written, and for whom? Is up to the reader. One reader may
Right.
pass it right through. It's just a nice page or two, and another story will be, oh wow, right? So that's the thing.
Exactly.
It's all different for each and every one of us, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing this, and also for taking your new direction in life. Because it's
Ah,
so many people think, well, I'm this age now. What can I do? You're at this
right.
age now with all of the wonderful skills and tools that you have. And now you can really, 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 really take your passion and go and do something. And you just don't know how wonderful it's going to be unless you try.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. And just thank you for having me on today. This was wonderful. We're so much on the same wavelength with writing. So I really appreciated this.
No, I really just do love what you're doing there. And the historical fact behind the fictional characters, but then people relate to the fictional characters because they feel like they know them. That's what is a good book. That is a good meal when you read a book like
Ah,
that and it keeps
nice.
on feeding you and you can't wait for the next one or the next one, right? So, yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
important. And kudos to you for writing it now. Keep on writing. You've got another
Thank you.
30 years, so don't worry about it.
I
So,
won't.
so just
That's
keep
good.
on going for as long as the imagination wants to put it out there, because we're never too old, right? We're never
You
too
as
old.
well. Yes. Thank
Just
you.
be proactive, folks. You never know what's going to come out of you. So pick up the books. She said that so from her site, which is Barbara J. Taylor. Don't forget the J in there.com. It's the books are on Amazon and you can buy all three of them. Remember, if you buy all three of them, Amazon always gives you a financial break if you buy them all together. And just start the reading and start the sharing, start a book club, share the podcast and have a podcast club on it. Be intrigued, keep the story going. There is somebody out there that you know that's just like this character. And at the same time, it's also educating you to actually understand that although these may feel fictional in a way, that really truly it's still going on, and it sheds light on
Right.
something that you weren't aware of before, but now all of a sudden you start to see. And you never know what a book can do in opening up your eyes. So thank you so much, Barbara. And to everyone else out there, enjoy the books, enjoy the podcast. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.